Hello, my name is Dr. Bahijja Raimi-Abraham, and I am going to be doing the jobs.ac.uk academic spotlight. So let's see what questions they have for me today. That's a very interesting question because I wouldn't say I have this sort of fairy tale story of I've always dreamed of becoming an academic. Far from it, actually. I think I sort of fell into academia. I would say the driver was a passion for research and a passion for science. And when it came to, if I take you back to my undergraduate, so I studied pharmacy. Pharmacy is a 4-year program, well at the time 4-year program, master's level, and then you have in your final year your dissertation and your research project. And then after that, you end up doing your training year, which was called pre-reg, now called foundation year, in a clinical setting or even an industry setting. Anyway, and so during my final year project, I discovered that you could be creative in science through research. And so I ended up sort of following a path that would allow me to still be creative in research, and that is what landed me in academia. So after my training year, once I qualified as a pharmacist, I then went on to do a PhD, and again that passion for science, that creativity in science, and I say it often, which is, I love the fact that as I think it, I can create it. And so that really has been my driver. I would say that during my postdoc is when I probably got a little bit of a hint into the realities of academia. And I did have times where I was like, I'm not sure if this is for me, because aside from me having the passion for, research, the passion for science, there are other things that I saw that came with being an academic, just little glimpses that I got in my postdoc. And those glimpses made me question if this environment was right for me. But anyway, I then started my academic journey as a lecturer. And I would say that what does inspire me now as an academic is still the passion for science and being creative in science. But there are other aspects to academia that, in my experience, that are for some people and are not. So we have to remember, I think naively, I thought that academia being an academic, would be 100% research. I'm in the lab and building my research group, but it's not. It's a mixture of things. It's got teaching elements, admin elements. And so I would say that right now, even though I hope I'm answering the question, because I said what inspired me to become an academic, I guess what I'm trying to explain or articulate is what still inspires me to be an academic in this moment is the fact that you do get to interact with all sorts of people and people from different walks of life, different people at different career stages, and you're constantly learning. So I think what drove me into academia is very different to what, as of now, keeps me in academia, which is, it is nice to be surrounded by so much knowledge. And whether it's from the undergrad, so you learn from the undergrad, you learn from the postgrad, you learn from your PhD researchers, you learn from your colleagues, you learn from collaborators. Okay, so I mentioned already that I studied pharmacy first, so 4-year degree at university, and then 1-year training. And then after my training, so I qualified as a pharmacist. I'm not telling you the year, but I qualified as a pharmacist. Actually, I don't mind telling you the year. What was the year? 2008, July. So that's when I qualified. And then I started my PhD October 2008. And then my PhD was 3.5 years, I think. I finally graduated in 2012. So I fivered in 2012 and then graduated in 2012. So that's like 4 years. And then after that, I went traveling. Went traveling. It was also something that the traveling side of things was because I kept getting fed up with people asking me, "What are you doing after your PhD?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing after my PhD. I am just trying to get through to the end of my PhD. So I went traveling for it's like a month, a bit. I so as a pharmacist, I can work at self-employed, so something called locuming. So I locumed for probably about 7 months before actually starting a postdoc. Actually, it was more than 7 months. It was probably just a little bit under a year. I'm trying to remember. And so then I started a postdoctoral research position, which is common for people to do after their PhD. And I did 2 of those in 3 years. And one of them was based, the second postdoc was linked with a grant that I'd applied for. And then I went on secondment, which was great. I wanted a break. I needed a break. I needed to explore a different environment and see where I could transfer my skills. It was a really good experience being in a different and non-academic environment. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to come back, actually be an academic and get a lectureship and things like that. I wasn't sure. But I went for it anyway, and here I am. So I don't know if that fully answers the question, but that's my journey into academia. So yeah, I hope that's that. I think that one of the good things about my job is that every day is different. For some people, that could be a little bit, oh gosh, I want a little bit of, I guess, stability or repetition. But I actually like that every day is different. Every week can be different. And it's also subject to the things that are going on at the time. So, for example, if let's say I've got to travel abroad to do work, then that's what that week is. Like in 2023, I was in Nigeria for 4 weeks. 3 weeks of that was in an area called a state called Enugu, where we were doing an ethnobotanical survey looking at the therapeutic and medicinal properties of Nigerian plants. And then after that was in another part of Nigeria called Abuja. But that was my job. That was my job. I got to go and explore somewhere and speak to people and build connections, conduct research, speak to students, pharmacy students in a different part of the world. So I would say I like that my job allows me to be flexible, and my job allows me to explore the world whilst building connections for greater science, for greater impact in health, global health, public health. So I think that's the answer to that. How do I inspire my students? The aim is not to inspire the students, if I'll be honest with you, and I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but it's my truth. I don't walk around assuming that I'm an inspiration to others or an inspiration to students, myself. I hope I've interpreted that right, but I would say what's important to me as an educator and as somebody who interacts with students is to ensure that I'm setting an example for my profession being a pharmacist, my profession also being an academic, and also when it comes to like the teaching side of things, even with the research, and I'm sorry, I assume this is undergraduates, but maybe it also means postgraduates. But for me as an educator, let's talk about undergraduates. I think it's important to be open, honest, and truthful about your profession, open, honest, and truthful about the realities of being in a public-facing role, and making sure that the students, as it relates to pharmacy students, have a very clear understanding of the importance of reputable information, knowledge to guide their decisions. That's very important to me. And I guess the other thing is and this is for all students, I guess, it's to make sure that there's an understanding that, life can come with its ups and downs, but that doesn't need to define you, and it doesn't need to steer you in a negative path or direction. As it relates to my PhD researchers, I guess the key thing for me that's important for PhD researchers is that they feel that they can work in a safe space within my group. When I started my research group, and there were certain things that happened that made me have to put some core principles and values in place as a sort of reminder of this is what our standards are, this is what, these are the values of the group. And one of those things is honesty, is integrity. And so for PhD researchers, my hope is that from their interaction with me, from their interaction in my research group, they are able to flourish because the environment is a safe space for them to be creative, for them to ask questions, for them to know that there are no silly questions, there are no quote unquote stupid questions. So that's the important thing for me. So I'm not quite sure if I'm answering these questions as needed, but I would say the aim is not to inspire. The aim is to nurture, to educate, to create safe spaces. Particularly, we know a lot about the challenges in academia of in the environment in which PhD researchers conduct their research. So yeah, I would say that's my answer to that. So my overall research interest lies in looking at exploring pharmaceutical challenges in infectious diseases. And we have three main ways in which we do that. So one is modeling infectious diseases using a non-animal based model. Then the second is looking at nanotechnology solutions with the hope to develop nanotheranostics, where you can simultaneously detect and simultaneously treat infections. And then the last bit of work, which started off as an advocacy and awareness, and it still sort of is, but it's really looking at, if we're remembering that I'm a pharmacist in my background, so remembering that anything that we're doing, when we're talking about infectious diseases, we're talking about patients and people at the end. And when I started looking more into sort of like the global health, public health side of infectious diseases, there was something that kept coming up around medicines management, medicines quality, sorry. And this is where I started getting into the advocacy and awareness of substandard and falsified medicines, so fake medicines. And so that has been forming its own, it's been on its own journey and becoming a bit more of a research objective. And so the kind of work we do is lab-based. We have some non-lab-based work with like the substandard and falsified medicines work. But it's lab-based. We use a variety of different techniques. We use cell culture. We make 3D cell culture models, mainly spheroids. And I really like our work. We always have the patient at the forefront of our minds in everything that we do. Yes, I hope that answers that question. That is a very good question. So I've gone through different phases of this. I used to use different platforms that would send me emails or notifications, and that was just very draining at times because I would get spam. It's not spam. I mean, I subscribe to these things. I would get lots and lots of emails, which can be very, very stressful. So what I actually do now when I have the time, because this is the other thing of being an academic, time is so precious. When somebody says, "Oh, can I just have a quick meeting?" I'm like, "Look, I don't know. What do you mean by quick?" I'm digressing. But time is so precious in life. But as an academic, you barely have time, especially if it's during the semester with lots of teaching. So what I tend to do, oddly enough, I use, should I say the name of the platforms? I don't know, this isn't a promoted or sponsored platform, but I use social media often to make sure I'm following, make sure the algorithm is on my side for research. But I use different social media platforms and I follow different people to see what they are doing. But that's a very targeted way of seeing what a specific author, a specific scientist, sorry, whose work I like, oh, what are they doing? Or also my colleagues, friends, and collaborators. But generally speaking, I've started using an alert system, so so I've kind of gone back, full circle, I've kind of gone back to a subscriber platform to help me search. And then I carve out time to just, I love, you said get excited. I love when I carve out time every 2 weeks to just enjoy going down a rabbit hole of papers, of articles, to read reviews and see what people are up to and what work they're doing and how that can inform my work. And then the other thing is, because I have a podcast, Monday Science, which when we start recording more episodes, that also gets me interested in other research. And sometimes for anyone who's listened to the episode, you'd probably notice that often even if the topic it's outside of my area, I am quite, because I'm reading outside of the topic anyway, and I'm like, oh, does this link with this? Does it link with that? So I get to stay on top of the latest research for my work, yes, through the means that I mentioned, but also because of the podcast, and I listen to podcasts as well. I listen to my own podcast, but I listen and I prepare for my own podcast, and I listen to other people's podcasts, so I get to know what people are doing. I can't say which age. I don't know which age, but younger self, I think there'll be two things I would say. One, you belong. Two, the second, keep being your authentic self. So the reason for those things, the you belong, is because I have been in spaces where I didn't feel I belonged. I even just been an academic. I have struggled, I've talked about this. I've struggled at times to be an academic because I was like, I don't see many people that look like me in this space. I don't feel I belong because I don't feel I'm a conventional academic. Even when if I'm out, whatever, someone says, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm an academic. They're like, oh, really? Yeah. So I think, and I acknowledged that feeling in my career when I was younger, but I never let it deter me from doing anything. But I think it would have been nice to be able to fast forward and see where I am now and know that, yeah, I belong. Like that, I think that hearing from myself, I guess that would be good reassurance. And then the second thing about being your authentic self, going back to the statement of the belonging, the other aspect of that, aside from not seeing many people who look like me in the spaces that I operated in, the other aspect is feeling like being my authentic self wasn't acceptable, or at least the professional version of my authentic self wasn't acceptable. And so, but again, stuff that I just was like, well, that's other people's problem because I'm just going to be me. And so, again, if I could speak to my younger self and have me say, hear me say, no, just keep doing you, you belong, be yourself, it's going to be fine. That would have been really nice. That would have taken away some of the anxieties and nervousness and apprehensions that I felt in my career.